Hey, welcome to our Communities at Grace community leader training. We are excited to talk about a lot of new vision and exciting things that we have going on at Grace. I'm going to walk you through today, just giving you some overview of the vision of where we're going with small group ministry here at Grace, what we see a healthy small group looks like. But also, I want to start to give you a framework for how to do that well. So we want you to succeed in leading a group and be able to see God move in that group. So we want to give you the tools you need to make that happen. So before we dive into that, I just want you to picture something with me. I want you to imagine 2,000 years ago, you're one of those people in Israel following Jesus around, and you begin to hear word about him. You start to follow him around. You start to see him teaching. And as you do that, there's a group of people that kind of join in with you that start to see these things as well. And you start to, with this group of people, there's people you gravitate to and you get to know, you build friendships with. And there's people you're talking about this stuff. And so you're seeing Jesus teach something, man, I've never seen anybody teach like that before. And then you see him do miracles or heal people. And, you're amazed at that and you share that with these people around you. And then, you see him with these arguments with the Pharisees and all these things going on. And you're like, wow, he has such authority. And you're amazed, you're mesmerized by him. You're just following him everywhere he goes and just, kind of hanging on every word. And then one day as you're sitting at his feet learning, there's this large group of you and he's in the middle of some of these arguments and he is turning and teaching his disciples and then he gets interrupted. And so this is recorded in Mark 3:31 that his mothers and brothers arrived, and then standing outside, they sent word to him, and they called him and said a crowd is sitting around him. And they said, behold, your mother and brothers are outside looking for you. So answering them, he says, who are my mother and my brothers? Looking about at those who were sitting around him. That's you. He says, behold, my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of God, he is my mother. And he is my brother and sister and mother. So you see what he did there? This group of friends that you were following Jesus around with and just taking all this in are now family. Jesus declared that. And not only are you family, but Jesus said you're his family. You're part of his family. And this idea, like friends become family when we follow Christ together. That's a powerful image to think of. And that's what a healthy small group in essence is. It's that image of becoming family when we follow Christ together. And so, when someone comes to Grace Community Church and they want to start in to a small group, we come to a small group wanting to build friendships. A lot of times, you may be new to town, you're new to the church, or you just want to get involved. You want to get to know people, right? You realize you need relationships. You want to build friendships. But deep down, you want more than that. You don't just want people to hang out and have fun with. You want people who are going to challenge you to grow. You want people that are going to challenge you to take big steps in your life, or they're going to support you when you're going through something hard, that are going to pray for you when you're struggling. And so you want that power of community that's going to help you grow and experience transformation in your own life. But even beyond that, if we're honest with ourselves, we want more than even that, because we want to be a part of something that God is doing. We want to be a part of something bigger. We want to see God move, not just in my own life or in my own family. I don't just want to be that better employee or better husband, better father, better mother. We also want to be a part of something big that God is doing, where he transforms my life, but he's also changing things in our community. Or you see somebody healed, you see somebody's marriage fixed, you get to be a part of what he is doing in the community. And so when we do those things, our friendships grow deeper as well. And this is what was happening with Jesus, is they were a part of what he was doing. These friends become family because they're following Christ together. So when we're looking at a healthy small group, it's in essence one that's doing those things, that's bringing friends along, becoming family, following Christ. But we want to give you a kind of a model and a structure to help you build closeness with your friends, but help you move towards an outward focus on what God is doing. So where he's leading. So a community group at Grace is marked by doing 6 things. It's first, confiding in one another. Second, praying for one another. Third, helping one another. Fourth, applying scripture together. Fifth, inviting those who need community. And sixth, launching people into their callings. So these 6 things are kind of the markers for us of what a healthy small group looks like. If you're going to be doing that process in some form or fashion, your group is walking through those different pieces of what it means to meet together. So this also, though, becomes a structure for how our group meeting goes. And we're gonna deep dive the subsequent videos. We're going to go through each of those in depth as to how you build out each one of those pieces within your small group. But today, I want to give you a sense of a structure for how a group meeting goes, because if you stay on top of each one of these 6 things, then it helps you to make sure that you're doing all the components that you need to do. Because we can easily start to do the ones that we like, or the ones that come naturally, the ones that we're gifted to do, and others can then just kind of slip by the wayside and we don't do those very well. And so doing this helps us just kind of stay on track, that we're doing all the components we need to do. So this structure, when you meet on a given night, you come together, this gives you the rhythm for how you go through a small group meeting. So first, you confide in one another, you share, and then you move into praying for one another and talking about how you pray in the community. You move into, is there any practical things we can do to help one another or help someone in our circle of friends? Is there, then we get into scripture and we apply that together and share it. And then we talk about other people we're inviting in together. And then we go into launching, and each person is kind of growing into their own calling. So that becomes the rhythm. We do that sequence in order. Now you can vary that. If you're thinking about planning your group, you can outline it just that way to say, let's check in of each of those components as you go through the night. But you can also switch that order up. It's not like some kind of legalistic framework you can modify. If you're focusing on one thing or another, you can put them in a different order for yourself. They're obviously going to differ depending on a given week. There may be, we've got a big issue going on with somebody. We were ready to spend some quality time praying for them because they're going through a really hard time. Then prayer may be a big chunk of your time together, and you may just kind of basically touch base on some of the other things. So that's, you ebb and flow with that depending on the needs of your group. But these 6 things help you to kind of keep that focus on a well-rounded group and what you need to do. Another component of how we're doing small groups here that helps you to bring this along, and it's really key, especially to the last part, the launching people, is that we take collective responsibility. This is the thing I say in the first meeting of a small group, is that we take collective responsibility for each other's growth. So right from the start, meeting number 1, we take ownership for one part of one of these 6 things. So you go through, you assign one person to take ownership of each one and walk through it, so that when you do your meetings, when I lead a group like this, what I do is I call on those people. Like, I'm kind of facilitating a meeting, but when I sit down with the group, when I get to the confiding part, I let the person who really owns the confiding part of our group lead that part. Let them ask questions. Let them bring ideas in for how they might want to do that, because that's their strength and that's the part they're owning. So if we're each taking a part of that, it takes the pressure off of the leader to have to do everything, but it also keeps everyone actively engaged. Instead of people coming and passively listening to a teacher, they're coming in, we are all taking ownership of this together. So I would say right from the start, try to establish that as part of your rhythm for how your small group's going to go. And there's always then going to be kind of a tension required. One of the biggest issues I'll run into with small groups overall is that there's kind of a tension between the intimacy required to do the first couple of parts of that. When we talk about confiding in one another and praying for one another and helping each other, we need to be able to open up and share honestly. At the same time, when we want to invite new people in, that makes it hard to be open and honest and share vulnerable things. If you've got a new person that you don't know coming in, you're always inviting people in. So there's some tension between that, but we also want to always keep that outward focus. And so being able to always be ready to invite someone in, be a part of what God is doing. And if he calls someone out, we want to be ready to do that too. So when we do those first part right and we experience that great intimacy, then we kind of feel that tension of, ooh, do we really want to open this up? But the problem is, like, when we don't do that, we kill the power of the group. So I would say a big part of it is just kind of working with that tension, keeping that outward focus, but building on intimacy. And sometimes it takes some creativity to make that work. But we want to keep that focus on on God and his purpose and what he's doing around us. And we want to be ready also for him to kind of shake things up and always fight to try to maintain those components. This is the battle that kind of is ongoing with a small group that we're always going to be working with. And so you as the leader, that's to me, as you're facilitating, that's part of what you're always trying to juggle, is trying to figure out, how do I kind of keep the balance in all these different things? But you don't have to do that alone either. And I want you to know, and I'll probably say this many times throughout these videos, is when you're struggling with different components of how to do that, there's no straight system for how you do all of that. Come to me. Ask me if you're struggling with that. I love to get into the nitty gritty of that and say, let's see what we're learning as we get in there with people and we're struggling with one component or another. And the great thing is, knowing these 6 things, it becomes easier for us to stop and identify where is it we're struggling. If we're like, these first 3, we do really, really well, but we have a really hard time inviting people. We have a really hard time welcoming people in because people get a little scared of a new person, right, in our group or whatever it may be. But you're able to identify, this is the part that's really a struggle for our group. Now we just know where we need to work. You don't have to be perfect at all 6 of these things. You don't have to have mastered each and every one of them. And that's why you have a group that all is working together on it anyway. But when we jump into that, we have the opportunity to see clearly and identify where God is working, where we need to grow, what we're doing together. So it kind of just opens us up to the ministry that God is doing among us. So before you file this away, before you kind of move on to the next thing, I want you to take a minute to think about how this might look for your group. So especially as you look at these 6 things that we talked about, remember, they're confiding in one another, praying for one another, helping one another, applying scripture together, inviting those who need community, and launching people into their calling. So if you take those 6 things, I want you to stop and take a look at the people that are in your group right now that you know that are committed, that are there all the time. Who are the people that are in and are committed to it? And I want you to, on your own as the leader, to stop and say, where would you put each of those? Where would you assign people if you knew what would be the one that each person would kind of take ownership of? Walk through that in your own and put a name next to each of those 6 things and say, who would be the best person to take responsibility for each of those? Make sure each person has a role. Now, this isn't set in stone. And I think the next time that you meet, when you're ready to start into this format and say, we're going to start operating this way as a group, to talk this through as a group on that meeting and make those commitments to say, but I think when you come into it as the leader, you start into that meeting and you say, this is what I see in you. We want to have a clear picture of why, because to take that person and say, I see how committed you are to prayer. And that's why I feel like you're the one that needs to challenge us on how we grow in prayer within our group. I want to do that. That's me showing honor right up front, me showing I believe in the strengths that you have. And so I want you as a facilitator, as a leader of this group, to stop and already start the process in your own mind of identifying the strengths of the people in your group and how they could take ownership of it. It's exciting for people to feel like they have a part in it, and it prepares them for whatever God may call them into, because they get a chance to use their gifts. So pray about that. Take a few minutes to just kind of lay that out for yourself. And then as we go into the deep dive, one of the things you might do is, as you get with those people and people identify their roles, have not just you watch through these videos, but specifically have the person who is going to be over that area watch the video associated with that section. So if somebody is going to be doing confiding for you, then they're going to want to watch that next video on confiding so that they can get ideas for how to do that well. So that's what we got. That's our big overview for today. And these next 6 videos, we're going to walk through each of those components, what it looks like in depth, and how you can, some simple things you can do to kind of facilitate those type of conversations in your group. Until next time.